are live. All right. And I see there are a couple of people already on. If you can hear me, please put something in the chat box to make sure that the microphone is working. My indicators say that the microphone is working, but I have learned the hard way that that doesn't mean a whole lot. Normally, I do these things on July 4th, on Thursdays. Thursdays, in this case, happen to be on July 4th, so I figured I should probably skip that one and pushed it up a day early. I don't know how many people will chime in. It's kind of start of a long weekend. Lots of people are out. But I figured rather than push this out even further, I should do a live stream so that we can talk a little bit about the Burris Optics Team Challenge. I say Burris Optics because Burris is a primary sponsor of this particular competition. It is put on by Competition Dynamics. They do 4 different competitions around. This is the only one of theirs that I've seen, and I have to admit that I am quite impressed. So much so that I think I'm going to try to shoot it next year. And, I've seen quite a few different competitions, and I have a ton of appreciation of how good these guys are. But this is the first time I walk away from a competition going, shit, I have to do this, right? Because I've been talking about this for a long time. I watched a lot of competitions, but it's inconvenient. I'm busy. I have a day job. I have comparatively young kids. Okay, Mr. The X is here, and he can hear me just fine. Thank you, sir. So I have young kids and this and that, and there's always an excuse not to, right? With this one, I'm going. It was an absolute blast. I really like the way this competition was set up. It was really it's a good way of saying this. It was really a multi-dimensional challenge in many ways, because it stressed a variety of different attributes that make you a shooter. So I thought it was absolutely worthwhile. If you have not done a competition like this, if you're considering, if you want to do something, this would be the one, right? And given the demands on my time and things like this, I can maybe do one a year, maybe 2. If I'm going to do one a year, this is going to be it. I mean, it absolutely kicks ass. Okay, before usually I let people a few minutes, give people a few minutes to kind of file in as the notifications go out. I don't want to start too much on a primary topic until a few more people are here, because otherwise, people file in 10 minutes late saying, "Oh, what did I miss?" So I'm going to start with a whole overview of the competition in a few minutes. In the meantime, if there is any questions, anything quick that I can cover, I will be happy to do so. If not, I can always talk for a few minutes. It's I sort of bullshit for a living, so I can do that fairly comfortably. Mr. Cunt Bucket, still one of the more interesting login names I've seen, has finally made it to a live. Mazel tov. Mr. Peter James from Australia is here. Thank you for joining me. Cunt Bucket, I can't wait to hear about all this Burris stuff. So there'll be a fair amount about the Burris stuff, right? Because I went there because of Burris. I didn't even know this competition exists. And while there, I did get a chance to play with some of their scopes, Burris and Steiner, and binoculars. But the competition is not set up by Burris. Burris is a primary sponsor. It's set up by Competition Dynamics. The tournament director was Zach Smith. Mr. Dex, are there any limits or requirements for the equipment used in the match? There are some guidelines. I didn't see a whole lot of general requirements. There are the usual limitations, and I'll talk about that. I'll talk about that a little bit as we get to it. Okay. So the reason I I have to apologize. I will be occasionally wiping sweat off. It's hot, and the way my office and my studio are set up is not very good for staying cold. So what I did, I own a couple of houses next door, and one of them live my parents. I used to live in this house, and I moved next door, and I retained my office and studio in the house where my parents are. They're not healthy, and this allows me a chance to keep an eye on them, but they're also old and they keep the house warm. So this is kind of like the sauna in here. If my forehead is glistening unusually brightly, I do apologize. Anyhow, where was I? Yeah, so how did I end up at this tournament? Purely by accident. So the guys from Burris kind of reached out, say, hey, you want to come? I said, where? So they go, Wyoming. Okay, I like Wyoming. Wyoming's good. When? June 20th through 22nd, I think, or 20th. No, the tournament was 21st, 22nd, 23rd, right? I go, no, it's my son's birthday. They go, we love kids. Bring your son. I said, okay. So I took my kids and flew over to Colorado. Since we were there anyway, they got a tour of the Burris factory, how they make scopes. I gotta say, so I visited Burris before. So Burris has a manufacturing facility in Greeley, Colorado, about an hour roughly north of Denver. And I've been going there occasionally for the last decade or so. And every time I see it's set up better, keep on making changes, keep on improving things. The manufacturing part of it is getting more mature. The ability to do QC and the equipment and the people space that dedicate to service and support has grown substantially. It's gotten bigger. It's better streamlined. They're looking at things more carefully. It's kind of nice to see this, right? So everybody, all of the better known players in the industry seem to be getting better, and Burris and Steiner, definitely among them. And I visit quite a few of them, right? Some are very sophisticated, some are not so much. Burris and Steiner are definitely among the better set up manufacturing facilities, I will say that. Mr. Practical Rifleman is here. Howdy. Thank you for joining us. Anyhow, so the kids and I hopped over to Denver, rented a car, visited Burris, got a nice tour of the place. Since we were flying, I didn't bring a ton of gear with me, so they gave me a few different pairs of binoculars for the kids and me to use during the tournament, which was interesting. I had never really laid eyes on them outdoors prior to that, so I'll talk about that in a moment. Mr. Northman is here. Howdy. And then a day later, we headed over to Wyoming. On the way to Wyoming, we ran into Wyoming weather. Wyoming weather was interesting because we got hit by hail. And when I say hail, let me see if I can find a good picture. So we were driving, into Wyoming, toward Douglas, Wyoming. That's where this thing was. And okay, so let's see if this is going to play. We had to pull over because the hail got a little bit significant. And I recorded a little video. I've never tried to play a video during the live stream before. Tell me if this works. So if you look outside the window, it's like sitting inside a drum. And the freeway, instead of being a nice, open, sunny space, ended up basically being a river of ice. My kids had a blast. Okay, let's see. I think I took a picture. So yeah. So looking out the window onto the. I don't think it's showing. No, it's not showing. Hold on. There we go. Let's try this. There. Looking out the window, the freeway turned into basically a river of ice. Let me see if it's going to play.
A little bit of hail.
Yeah. Damn it, guys, can you hear the audio from the video I'm playing, or can you only hear me talking, or does it give you both?
Just a little bit.
Yeah. That was quite impressive, right? And that's that's when we were finally got to Burris. Now I'm dealing with a banged up rental car. But anyhow, so we got to the tournament sort of late because of hail and all that. Did a little bit of shooting the evening before. Burris sponsored shoot, so we could go shoot some suppressed handguns and all that. That's all fine and dandy, but I shoot a lot. That's not news for me. Then the competition starts, and okay, you heard the audio on YouTube. Excellent, very good. So one of the things I should have done, but I didn't look very carefully into how this competition is set up. I didn't read the rules super carefully. I basically showed up with a camera and binoculars and roamed around and looked at the stages, looked at people shooting, and looked at how they shoot, how the good teams shot, and how the ones that were not as great shot. There were people there who were, coming there for multiple years. They were clearly very, very good. If I shot it, I'd definitely be toward the bottom quarter, bottom third of the shooters. I think they were. It's hard to say for sure, right? So it's easy for me to say watching it, but when they're doing it under time pressure, it's rough. I was better than a few people there, but worse than the majority of them. This is not an easy tournament, but it's a blast. So here's how this thing is set up. It's a 3-day tournament. It's a team tournament. The 2 team members, one has a precision rifle, typically a bolt gun of some sort, and a handgun. You do need to have a sidearm. And the other one has an accurate semi-auto. It's called a carbine, and also a handgun. So when I say rifle, I mean a bolt gun. When I say carbine, I mean an AR-15. And handgun will know what a handgun means. There are AC is on. That's nice. Except that vent is closed. So AC is on, but it's not going to help me very much. Could you guys give me 1 sec? Let me see if I can fix this with any sort of expediency. I cannot. Tall ceilings. Okay, screw this. So the way this course works, so there's a 3-day competition. In the morning, you go and shoot one of the field courses. What is a field course? It is a course, most of them, I think, were 4 shooting positions. You get all your gear, whatever you need with you, tripod, shooting bag, ammo, water, snacks, guns, whatever you need with you. And you have 1 hour to cover this whole field course. You start at first position and go to the second, third, and fourth. And you need to finish it within an hour. So while humping all your stuff from position to position. Total amount of walking is about a mile. It was getting a little warm, and mile is not a lot, but when you need to do a fair amount of shooting, in all of it within an hour, there is time pressure. Each shooting position is unknown plates, meaning these are all metal plates. The range officer tells you, okay, so there is a 2x4 or 1x8 stage. 1x8 means there is 1 shooting position here. You shoot from this particular spot identified with a flag. Very cool. So they're identified with a flag, and then there are 8 plates. That's 1x8. 2x4 means that there are 2 separate shooting spots you need to shoot from, and there's only 4 plates out. You just need to engage these 4 plates twice if you're a rifle shooter. If you are a carbine shooter, you only need to engage 4 plates at every position. So, for example, if it's a 2x4 spot, you basically just go from the first position. You need to engage 4 plates, and that's it. And if you are a semi-auto shooter, you can use up as much ammo as you have, right? If you are a rifle shooter, you need to engage all 8 plates or 4 plates twice from 2 different spots. but you get one shot per plate. You cannot engage the same plate twice. So for a precision guy, for a rifle guy, there is quite a lot of pressure in terms of what to shoot, in terms of how to shoot, and you have to really have to be able to engage them in the first try. So this is kind of where a lot of the time pressure comes in. So first they tell you that there are plates, and they're not always easy to see. They're usually 2 or 3 fairly easy to see. 1 or 2 are typically hidden nicely, and depending on the lighting conditions, they were hard to see. I didn't have any time pressure. I was just hanging out there with the binoculars. And there were a couple of plates. I know they were there. I could not find them for the life of me until the range officer pointed them out. With a little more experience, maybe I would have been able to find them, maybe not. But that's the part of it where good optics really help. More so with binoculars than with rifle scopes, but with rifle scopes as well. There were some positions where I walked by there multiple times, and there were some spots where there would be this plate that I could see it a little bit later in the day. In the morning, the way the light was falling, I could not see it for the life of me. The binoculars I was using were not particularly high-end. These were Burris Signature series. I had the Signature LRF 10x42, Signature HD 10x42, and Signature HD 12x50. The LRF one is in the $800-900 range, and the regular ones are in the $500-600 range, somewhere there. So they're not super fancy binoculars, but they were quite competent. I like the 10-power ones, especially the 12 was not bad, but the competition is good. It was a little bit weak. But the 10-power ones, with and without the laser rangefinder, were quite competent. I had a hard time. And listening to the team members communicating, right? First, you get over to shooting position, you get your instructions from a range officer, and you pop the binoculars, if you have them, onto a tripod, and you start looking for these plates. Some of these plates, finding them was a bitch. And more than once, I remember the guy with the binoculars telling his teammate, so usually the way it works, you want the semi-auto guy to shoot first because he has more ammo to use, and also by watching what the semi-auto guy is doing, you can learn a lot about what the wind is doing downrange, right? So you want the semi-auto guy. Well, we'll talk about strategies in a moment. Semi-auto guy can fire multiple shots, and you can learn a fair bit about what's happening with atmospherics downrange that way. But there was multiple situations where I saw the guy with the binoculars communicate quite clearly to his teammate where the plate is, which tree, yada, yada, yada. And I'm confident that the guy with a carbine, with a semi-auto, was looking at the right spot, still couldn't see the plate. And I can understand why you needed to have pretty decent optics to see that. The range of optics there was considerable. I saw all people use all sorts of stuff. I think 1 or 2 people had Razor Gen 3s, quite a few Burris XTR Pros. The least expensive scopes I've seen there was an Athlon, like $400-ish Athlon, and $400-ish Swamp Fox. Interesting that Swamp Fox got flooded. So on the first day of the tournament, we got rained out in the afternoon, some serious rain, and one guy had to shoot the rest of the competition. He had the Swamp Fox Kentucky Long 2-12x44 on his semi-auto. That was on an AR-15. And water got inside. He had bubbles inside. But he still managed to shoot the rest of the tournament. He had some trouble here and there, but it definitely didn't help. Shit happens. That's why it may not be a bad idea to have a spare optic with you. But then again, it's easy for me to say, right? I have scopes up the wazoo, but if you have to pay for all of this stuff, yeah, that gets a little tricky. So 3 days of the competition. Each day, sometime in the morning, you have an assigned time. Some people start very early in the morning. Some people start a little bit later. And you complete one of these 3 field courses. So every shooter goes through every field course. And since it was getting a little bit warm, From the hiking and endurance standpoint, going earlier was better. From finding the plate standpoint, I think earlier in the morning was the most challenging. When the sun is low and the shadows are weird, some plates were really difficult to see. It's kind of interesting. When I go next year, I need to think about what optics I'd want to use and who I dislike enough to be on a team with me, right? So, because anybody stupid enough to team up with me is basically giving up any chance of placing at the top or anywhere near the top. But anyhow, the practical rifleman, are those cheaper Athlon and Arcan scopes worth owning? Some folks were saying Japanese glass and EP5s, but I haven't seen anybody that knows what they're looking at review one. Interesting question. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. Let me finish the overview of the competition. And when we talk about gear, I'm going to touch on these kind of things. So anyhow, so that's the field stages. That you do that in the morning. In afternoon, you do the assault stages. There were 4 assault stages. They're done differently. So you will complete 4 assault stages in those 3 days of competition. Walking in between the assault stages is not that big a deal because they're set up close to each other, and walking between the assault stages is not timed. But the assault stages is where the match director gets really creative. And some of these were, oh, for fuck's sake, just a shit show. Pardon my French. And a shit show from the standpoint, I mean that in a good way. They were challenging. They were challenging in an unusual way. And the assault stages is what really sold me on that together with the field stages is why I want to do this tournament with this competition, because it stresses many different aspects of being a precision shooter. Note, I didn't say precision rifleman because there's also a handgun involved. I spent more time on the 3 of the assault stages, a little bit less on the 4th one. I have some pictures I can show you later if you guys are interested. But here's how it went. So one of the assault stages, the one I spent more time on, because Sky Layton, my friend who works for Burris, who is the reason I was there, I've known Sky forever and a day. He's a good dude, and I tend to have not yet caught him bullshitting to me. So he said I would like this competition, and boy, was he right. But anyhow, so Sky basically goes, yeah, you got to do this. And he was the range officer on Assault 4. So I spent a lot of time there, and I shot at some of those plates. So I have an idea of how difficult this is. And then once again, I did it without time pressure and all that. So at the Assault 4, you have, I think, 5 minutes to complete the whole thing. Not the walking, just the shooting. There are 4 positions, some distance from each position. There are several plates in a row for you to shoot with a handgun. So one of the teammates, starts on that with a handgun. If he hits the first plate, he moves on to the next one. And they were between 4 and 8 plates, all different at different distances, different sized, etc. Not super challenging, but challenging enough and far enough. And this is from a handgun standpoint, you want to have a red dot. They were far enough where you will need some holdover. Likely you want a red dot. Is it possible with irons? Some of them, yeah, a red dot is a good thing. I would highly recommend red dot, well, with co-witnessed irons. Excuse me. If you're thinking bad things about me, this is just sparkling water. I have a sheep hunt in February, so I'm dropping down my alcohol consumption. I need to drop 50 pounds. I'm going to die in those freaking mountains. Anyhow, so you get your handgun, you shoot at the plate. If you hit the plate, you move to the next plate. If you miss the plate, your teammate, which whatever long gun he happens to have, bolt gun or a carbine, has to engage a hanging plate. I don't remember how big it was, 12 inches maybe 18, I think it was 12. That's about 250 yards. 250 yards for a competent rifleman is a cheap shot, right? Yeah. Unsupported, you can have one knee on the ground. Okay, and you cannot use a tripod, you cannot use bags, such. You can use whatever is attached to your rifle. So you can sit your ass on the ground. One knee can touch the ground, nothing else. So what that means is that if you spent $1,000 on a Sky triple pull, you can probably get on one knee and shoot that thing quite comfortably. And Dorgan Trostel, I cannot quite remember his last name. He's he posts on the hide as D-Tross. Really, really good shot. I was there when Dorgan showed up. Here's what it looks like on that stage. Everybody else there was dying. Dorgan with a triple pull Sky bipod, doing just fine. Okay, so but his teammate, that's the guy. So the guy just behind Dorgan there is Sky Layton from Burris. That's the guy who invited me over. And this gentleman, I don't know if, who's wearing shorts. The guy with the shorts is Dorgan's teammate. Notice that his handgun does not have a red dot. He had a Dickens of the time on that stage. A red dot would have been very helpful, but otherwise he seemed to be a very competent shooter. Okay. All right. So where was I? Yeah. 250 yards, if you have some sort of support, is not bad. 250 yards, if you can sit on your ass and you have a sling and you train with a sling, is not bad. 250 yards with a heavy competition rifle, one knee on the ground, mostly offhand, not so simple. I did some shooting at that with the Sky's AR-15 afterwards. Yeah, I hit it on the third shot, I think. And I don't practice offhand as much as I used to. I will be practicing between now and next summer because I generally shoot a fair bit offhand, but more within 100 yards. I don't shoot so much past 100 yards. I'll push it out to about 300, and I'll start shooting at plates offhand at 300, as frustrating as it is. A couple of stages that show that this is a good skill to have, to be able to do that offhand, to be able to do it sitting, kneeling, etc. So the guy with the long gun keeps on shooting it at plate at 250 yards until he hits it. Once he hits it, the guy with the handgun tries to shoot the next plate. If he hits it, great, we keep on shooting. If he misses, we're back to the guy with the long gun to shoot the same plate at 250 yards. And you're doing all of that on the clock. So, interesting things. People who did not have long, like sitting height, kneeling height bipods started getting creative. I'll show you a picture that it looks a little Brokeback Mountain, but you got a competition, you got to. The heck is it? Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. So you just saw a picture of Dorgan with a long bipod, looking perfectly comfortable. If you do not have that, you might be doing this. Before you get to get your mind out of the gutter, let's hope you have not seen Brokeback Mountain. So what they're doing here, the guy with a handgun basically once he misses, gets on all fours so that his teammate can put a bipod on his back and engage the target at 250 yards. Otherwise, you're using up a bunch of ammo and you're wasting a bunch of time. So people had to get creative. Another assault stage was all long guns. You can sit on your ass, but you cannot go prone. You cannot use tripods, bipods, anything like that. You could use a sling if you had one, where there are, I think, 6 plates at, what did I measure them? At about 330 yards, something like that. And same business, right? You need to shoot them. And if you shoot one, you move on to the next one, and so on. You can use as much ammo as you want. except if you miss a plate, you switch rifles with your teammate. So if you were using a rifle, you shoot a carbine, you take a shot with that. If you miss with a carbine, you switch again, and so on and so forth. And you're doing all of that on a time limit. So, right? So you and your teammate basically sit on the ground next to each other. You cannot put your elbows on the ground, I think. You have to sit. So let's see, where's a good picture? Here's a pretty good, decent picture. These are a couple of guys. Okay, this guy's placed, I think, third. Let me show you the picture. So these guys are very competent. So the guy sitting over there in a bluish shirt, who's shooting right now with a semi-auto, that's Chris Way. And the gentleman who's standing on one knee, getting ready to trade rifles with him, is a MDT-sponsored shooter from Canada. Dave, what's his name? Dave Giriadi. Okay. I didn't know the guy before I met him at CERN. Very nice gentleman. So he was one of the guys shooting with the Razor Gen 3. So he's got his competition rifle there. He was the bolt gun. Both of these guys are very, very good shots. And they had, like everybody else, a rough time. So this stage, this was Assault 3. There was a maximum number of 12 hits. Nobody got 12. I think 2 teams got 11, maybe 3 teams got 11, something like that. And, there were people there like, Dorgan, Chris Way, I think John Pinch was there. Some seriously good shooters. And no team cleaned this stage. That was challenging. Let's see, where was I? Okay. One assault stage was handgun only, but you start like 90 yards away from the plates, and if you miss, there is a 150-pound dummy, pick it up, move a little closer, shoot again, and so on. So different ways to game it. And the fourth assault stage, well, that was actually Assault 1, I think it was. Yeah, Assault 1 was they had a little ravine and a bunch of targets, paper targets and plates set up there, and the team kind of moves down this ravine, shooting at different things, close and far, and all that. I didn't spend a ton of time on that stage because the way it was in the ravine, it was very hard to see what's happening for a variety of obvious reasons. I had to be well behind them, since being somewhere in front of them carried a reasonable risk of getting shot. And I didn't care about that stage enough to get shot. It was really cool. It stressed your competence with 3 different weapon systems: bolt gun, semi-auto, carbine, and handgun. It applied some time pressure. It applied some physical fitness pressure. Not extreme, but significant. When walking around, I saw a couple of guys there fatter than me, and they could shoot. But hiking during field stages was not something they enjoyed very much. And looking at the level of effort for that, could I do it? Yeah, but I'd be huffing and puffing. There are a couple where you go uphill. Like generally, it's not a hard hike, but if you have to shoot in between, that can get a little hairy, right? This is where being 300 pounds soaking wet coming out of the shower probably is a disadvantage. But most importantly, with all of the weapon systems, it was the ability to engage your target on the first shot was really encouraged, really stressed, and missing your shots was really penalized. And I like that. A slow hit is usually better than a very fast miss. Then again, perhaps I'm biased. Anyhow, so that's that. It was a long monologue. Questions about that? Anything else in terms of the competition format you'd like me to clarify on? And if not, I'll look through the comments and we'll talk a little bit about gear and about what I thought about strategies and what the good teams did well and the teams that are not as good struggled with. So I'll drink some water. I'll give you guys a minute. If there are any questions on the competition format, now's the time. For one of the stages, one of the field stages, I did not see that myself, but one of the range officers sent me a very cool picture. I'm going to find it and show you. Another, very cool, very interesting way of people improvising, which I think is really impressive. You really have to think on your feet, and it takes some, it takes some dedication. I'll tell you that. Okay, all right, there you go. I found the picture. Let me share it, and I will then address some questions. Hold on, where's my share thing? There we go. Why do I not see it? Hold on, guys, give me 1 sec. Oh, there we go, I found it. It's kind of low resolution, I need to zoom in. This was texted to me, so it's not an especially high quality picture, but you'll understand what I mean. So this is one of the field stages. They were, I think, 8 plates at this one, but the way the plates were positioned, you could not shoot them prone. You had to shoot them standing. And if you're really short, you would have a hard time seeing about half of them standing, maybe more. So this team had to improvise. It's a guy and a girl. The girl, I've seen her shoot. She's good. She's very short though. So I am 6 foot tall. I don't know how tall she was. Maybe 5 foot. If taller, not by much. Probably around 5 foot. Like I stood next to her, and she was tiny. Her teammate gets on all fours. She stands on his back and shoots off of a tall tripod at targets. I think at that stage everything was beyond 400 yards, and hits 2 out of 4 plates, standing on basically a wobbly, not a hugely stable platform. But these guys were competent. The guy was good. The girl was good. What's really important, they communicated well. When I saw them communicate, everything was clear. I don't know how well they know each other. I think they're just friends. I don't think they're married, or maybe they're family members. I don't know. I didn't go into details, but they clearly understood each other well. Their communication was efficient and clear. And with all of the teams that did well, that was the one thing that they absolutely had in common. Their ability to communicate was very good. The team that won, there were a couple of guys from Nebraska, and I talked to them, and I'm getting old. I don't remember their first names. The last names you can look up. But they shot this tournament together for 6 years. This is the first time they won it. They were extremely capable, very good long-range guys, and their communication was just clean and efficient. It was good. All of the teams who did well had the ability to communicate quickly, and when you look at this kind of stuff, one of the things you notice is how much time is wasted on inefficient and unclear communication. This is where one thing you need to be used to each other, And two, you kind of need to set up your equipment and your gear in a way that allows you to quickly and efficiently communicate useful information. So that was kind of interesting. Okay, all right, so let's see, let me look at the comments and we'll talk a little bit more about gear. Well, we'll probably talk about gear as we go along. All right, for about half hour ago, Mr. The X, because are there any limits or requirements for the equipment used in the match? So for the bolt gun, I think the usual PRS-ish style requirements applied. I think something centerfire 243 or bigger. The bullet could not go faster than, I want to say, 3,200 foot per second, something like that. So like 6.5 Creed would be a good cartridge. There are several others. I'll talk a little bit how I would set this up if I needed to prepare for this tournament. And so there are a couple of different ways to look at this. For the semi-auto, there were a few large frame ARs, but I think there were more AR-15s, just accurate AR-15s shooting 69 or 75 or 77 grain, 5.56 ammo. That was sufficient, and the advantage of that is that you can carry a lot of the ammo, because remember, the carbine shooter can take multiple shots, and having some extra ammo for that was very beneficial. Okay. For handguns, nothing smaller than 9mm, I think nothing bigger than 45. All of the people I saw shoot were shooting 9mm. Since this kind of stresses accuracy, if you have a double stack petition gun, if you have a staccato or something like that, that's probably a good gun for it. Lots of people shooting Glocks and stuff like that. You need a good amount of ammo again, so something reasonably flat shooting and that you can carry a fair amount of was an advantage. I'd say 9mm is probably your best bet. Mr. Just an Average Man. I am in the Philippines and was on Mactan, where many manufacturers have their scopes assembled in the local. Yes, so there are at least a couple of manufacturing campuses in the Philippines that I know of. Mr. Plants Hill, semi-auto guy should get 2 shots. I don't know about that. So, that's viable. It would definitely change what equipment is used. If semi-auto guy was only getting 2 shots, we would probably see more large frame ARs shooting things like 6 Creed or something like that. Very likely, because you would need something box-wind better. One of the interesting advantages of shooting 5.56 and having as many shots as you want is that you can learn a lot about the environment. And in principle, the plates can go out to 1,000, but in this competition, I think the furthest plate I saw was 700-ish. But the terrain is quite rugged, and the wind conditions occasionally could get tricky, and gusty mornings a little bit quieter. As you got a little later in the day, wind could get interesting. But all of those distances are perfectly doable for an accurate AR-15, and having access to a good amount of ammo was a benefit. Honestly, if I was doing this for the first shot, you pick the furthest freaking plate you can see, settle yourself down, aim dead center with your semi-auto, and fire 2 or 3 shots while your teammate is looking, and you will learn a lot about the wind. Right, and once you kind of work that out, then you go and try to shoot your 4 plates. Or maybe you'll hit them, right? But at that distance, there's going to be some sort of wind. If you aim that center, you're probably going to miss. But you can back calculate what the wind is, and then when you get to the rifle guy, that knowledge of the wind is going to really help him, because the rifle guy has to has 1 shot per plate. That's it. You can't shoot more. But at least that's how I would probably approach it. Again, easy for me to say. I was roaming around observing. I haven't shot it. Maybe I'll shoot it next year and change my mind. But I did spend a lot of time looking and seeing what successful people were doing and just thinking through the challenge. And remember, since I didn't have any pressure, time pressure, or any other kind of pressure on me, it's easy for me to think through the challenge. A lot harder when you have to move, shoot, communicate with your teammate, and do all of that on the clock. Mr. Practical Rifleman, are those cheaper Athlon and Arken scopes worth owning? Some folks were saying Japanese glass in the EP5s, but I haven't seen anybody that shows what they're looking at review on. So I've tested one Arken scope. It was SH4 Gen 2, and that was actually a good scope. But then when I started digging through, I realized that the failure rates and inconsistency on these are so high that I can't in good faith issue a review based on that scope, because I do not believe that what I had was representative of what was truly out there. It was a nice scope. There was nothing wrong with it. The track, the shot, that was perfectly reasonable. I've seen so many of this crap out. Yeah, I don't have fully statistical data, but at some point there is so much anecdotal evidence, it's kind of overwhelming. I wish, I've talked about in the past, I wish Arken gets the QC up and going, but I see these crap out all the time. I know a YouTuber who got 6 of them and had to send 3 back for repair. And then, I had a couple of people, I've looked at several other Arkens that other people bought, because, I request a scope, they send me a scope. Sometimes it's cherry picked, right? So I have to go check. I looked at several models of the same exact scope that I had, that other people bought, and they were all different. So would I buy an Arken at this stage? Not for anything that matters. If you want something with lots of features that's inexpensive, and you have the time to, potentially send it back or figure out if it works or screw around with it, yeah, absolutely. But, I'm a simple man. In any rifle scope I get my hands on, I want the core fundamentals to be worked out. It has to stay zeroed. It has to adjust consistently. It doesn't have to adjust accurately. It just has to adjust consistently. Excuse me. Give me 1 sec. I'm going to mute myself for a moment. Hold on. I don't think any of you were itching to see or hear me blow my nose. So there's that. What was I? Yeah, Arkens Athlons. So if you go to a competition like this, I would not take an Arken. If you only have 1 gun and 1 scope, it's not a bad idea for if you want to get good with it. Arken or inexpensive Athlon would not be what I put in it. Again, you can afford what you can afford, but there are inexpensive scopes that are not as feature-rich, that have very, very good track record of staying zeroed and adjusting accurately. Now, does that mean if you buy an Arken or an inexpensive Athlon, you will necessarily have problems? No. And Athlon has been out long enough where quite a lot of this stuff has proven to be very robust. Whatever OEMs they use seem to work. For example, Athlon Helios BTR 2 to 12 by 42. I've spent a lot of time with it, and I know a lot of people with them, very few failures, right? So, and I saw a couple of those out in the competition, and they did fine. I have quite a lot of experience with Athlons, Ares ETR scopes, a little bit with BTRs, more with the ETRs, and they generally hold up, although they're not cheap. They're about $1,000. If I were trying to do this competition on a budget, look, honestly, you can hold on. I mean, It's not ideal, but if I had to, I could shoot quite a lot of that with a fixed 10 powers WFA. If 4 to 16 or 6 to 24, probably 4 to 16 if you need to shoot offhand sometimes. Element helix front focal plane would be good. You do need a front focal plane scope for this. That would be really helpful. Once you get up in the $900 range, there are quite a few options. In almost any budget, once you get past $300-400, you can find something that has a reasonable reputation of being robust and holding up. But would I be able to see all of those plates within a $400 scope, any $400 scope? And the many lighting conditions I saw there, no. There were quite a few plates there that were challenging with $1,000-1,200 scopes. I mean, I was thinking, how would I, set up a rifle and a carbine for this competition, right? So, it's a Burris Optics challenge, right? So if I were going there, I'd be very tempted to make it a Burris project since I have Burris scopes. And I would probably put a Burris XTR3i, 3.3 to 18 by 50 on the carbine, on a semi-auto, and the XTR Pro on the long gun. I saw quite a few XTR Pros there. I was very surprised that I didn't see maybe a couple. XTR3i, 3.3 to 18. As a magnification range, that's a damn near perfect scope for the conditions there on an accurate semi-auto carbine. Some sort of a 3 to 18 or thereabouts would have been more or less perfect for the AR-15. Okay. But again, I saw several Strike Eagles, and I don't think people struggled with them. What else? There were a couple of guys with inexpensive scopes, and they flat out said, okay, that's what we can afford. And you know what? It's better to go shoot with what you can afford, right? So than buy the fanciest scope and not shoot, which is what I usually do. But on the other hand, it would have been, very tempting to go there with a couple of tangent thetas, because with some of those plates in the shade, dark and hidden, nicer glass would have been a significant advantage. Okay, so moving right along. Mr. the X, what was the longest distance? So the closest on the field stages, the closest plate I saw was about 200 yards, and the furthest was 700-ish, maybe a little more, somewhere on there. What's really interesting was that surprising number of people missed that 200-yard plate and some really good shooters missed it. Boy, were they pissed. Because it's easy, you don't take it seriously. It's another mental thing, right? Oh, 200 yard. What's 200 yard with a precision rifle? Nothing, right? But you still have to aim. You still have to be careful. You can still whiff it. And it was not a super small plate, but it was not huge. It's another thing that I noticed, just talking, just listening how people talk, is that so the further plates are hard because of how the wind works and everything. But in terms of the apparent target size, a large plate at 700, when there's not too much wind, might be an easier shot than a small plate at 200, right? So the plate at 700 is 4 times bigger. And I didn't see anybody. I didn't see anybody really pay a ton of attention to that, so which was kind of interesting. At least they didn't talk about it. Good shooters probably paid attention to it automatically, but I didn't see that. I didn't see that communicated especially well. Mr. Practical Rifleman. So it seemed that having versatile equipment was an advantage. Yes, within reason. So the idea is that another thing that I really like in this competition is that quite a few precision guys I see are amazing precision shots, but they never practice offhand. They shoot 24-pound 6mm rifles. It's a bitch to shoot offhand. So when you are preparing for a competition like this, you kind of have to think a little bit how you want to set up your equipment, right? You have to go and experiment what you're comfortable shooting unsupported, how much weight you're comfortable humping around the hills. Tomorrow's 4th of July. I think the kids started practicing with some of the fireworks early based on the sounds outside the window. How much weight you're willing to carry with you. It's an interesting balancing act, which is, by the way, one of the things I like about it. I would not go there with a 20-pound rifle, right? So of the stuff that I have, what would I take with me? So when I first was setting it up, I was really thinking I'll just take my 308 fix. It's a lightweight gun. It's very accurate. It's easy to carry around. I can put a heavier scope on it. And for the distances they were shooting, it would work fine. But the more I think about it, so one of the rifles I have here that I've been testing on that I'm about to start talking, I will be talking about it a lot more, is the Stag Pursuit bolt action rifle, chambered in 6.5 PRC. And the way it is set up probably nearly ideally for a competition like this. Stag aims it at kind of a hunting-ish crowd, but it's a little bit on a heavy side well, more than a little on a heavy side for a pure hunting rifle. But it is very accurate, and it is really set up very nicely for a crossover course like this. When I do the video on the rifle, you'll hear me talk about it a good bit. It's a 22-inch gun. It's basically Aero Precision owns Stag. So it's essentially an Aero Solus action. And now that I've shot quite a few guns with that action, I am increasingly more and more impressed for the money. It's really excellent action. And the guns I've shot with it have been consistently accurate. So this Stag Pursuit, so it's an Aero action. It's a trigger tack trigger, 22-inch, kind of mid-weight, fluted, though looks pretty, I don't know. Mid-weight, 6.5 PRC barrel. As is, it's hair under 9 pounds without anything else. By the time you put a suppressor on it, what's a suppressor I have on it is Q's half Nelson. It's maybe 10 ounces. So it's about 9.5 pounds ballpark with a suppressor. And then depending on what scope you put on it, right? So I was considering going hunting with it, and for that I put a fairly lightweight Leupold Mark IV, 4.5 to 18 on it. For this competition, if I put a Burris XTR Pro with rings or a Tangent Theta that I'm increasingly leaning toward, Tangent with a decent mount would add at least 3.5 pounds to that rifle. So we are now at about 13-14 pound rifle. And that is an interesting weight because one of the things you really want to be able to do in a competition like this, you want to be able to spot your own shots. You want your teammate to spot your shots. It's really helpful when you see them as well. Because, for obvious reasons, honestly. And the way I would set up a gun for this, I would basically go with the lightest rifle where I can comfortably spot my own shots. And with a 6.5 PRC and a 14-pound gun, I can spot my own shots in a reasonable comfort. And so that would probably be my option. Also, since for the guy with a rifle, you get one shot per plate, something flat shooting that is less affected by wind is an advantage. So 6.5 PRC is a better cartridge for this than my perennial, old, trusty 308. Okay. Don't remember how I got into this, but oh yeah, versatile equipment. So yeah, the question, but yeah, versatile equipment is good. If I was going to competition where I shoot everything supported, I can go, heavy rifle is an advantage. Some stuff unsupported, hiking around with all this shit. I'd get a very, very nice flexible bipod and a flat shooting cartridge and go for something not too light, not too heavy. Versatility here isn't it a big deal. B Warren 5. So how many shooters were there? I think it was around 70 or 71 teams, something like that. So good number. I was a little surprised there weren't more. Like I told you guys, good environment, good people, good camaraderie, spectacular competition. I was shocked there weren't more people there. So, Cunt Bucket replying to the Practical Rifleman, I'm not sure about the whole Athlon lineup, but the fixed 10x is decent. Yeah, I've played with it a little bit. It's a nice scope. So, yeah, I'm not going to rehash this, but it takes a lot of time and effort and dedication to go to a competition like that. Can you do it with an inexpensive scope? Yeah, test it well. Would I risk it? No, I'd move up market a little bit. More with Mr. Cunt Bucket. I really like the idea of competitions focused on teamwork like this. I may try to find something similar in my area. Where do you live? Which part of the country? So I'm not sure where you are. This thing is a blast. I wish more places did this. But you do need a good amount of space for it, right? So it's much easier to set up an RL22 match because you just need basically a normal shooting range for it. There are not that many places around that do this. So Competition Dynamics has, I think, 4 competitions they set up, all a little bit different. There's another team competition, although it's set up a little bit different, in New Mexico, about 3 hours from me, but it's in September. When my kids are already in school again, it would be very hard for me to make for that one. The nice thing about this Burris Optics Team Challenge is that it seems to be about the same time toward the end, like third, fourth week of June every year. And that summer, my kids are on vacation. And that's right around the time when my son has his birthday and my wife has hers. They're kind of a week apart. So what we did this time, I took the kids, went to this competition, had a blast. Then my wife flew in when that whole thing was done, and we drove to another part of Wyoming where I have a friend and spent some time there, kind of on a family vacation. So a summer is easier for me to do. And once again, the format of this tournament that I just saw was spectacular. So, Mr. Practical Rifleman. I have a Strike Eagle 3218, but the reticle is hard to see below about 8x, correct. That's basically one of the problems with front focal plane scopes, in that if you make the reticle too thick, it becomes a little overbearing on high magnification. And if you make it too thin, it becomes a little bit harder to see a low magnification. You can mitigate that to some degree with reticle features. I think I've designed reticles for it that work, but most big optics companies don't do that for reasons I don't fully understand. So on low magnification, they tend to rely on illumination. And because most of the plates you shoot are fairly dark, and especially if a plate is hard to see and it's in the shade and you're on lower power, you can just turn on illumination. For example, for some of the stages there, where you were shooting, where you needed to go in a lower magnification because you were shooting unsupported, illumination probably would have been helpful. That's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. It is a weakness of front focal plane precision scopes, but trying to do this with a second focal plane conventional scope would have been a significantly bigger problem, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Just an average man. Is Philippine Kenko Corporation one of the main optic campuses here? Drove by it the other day. Correct. So there are two. One is Kenko, another one is Asia Optical. They also call them ScoPro, etc. So with Age Optical, there is like a big facility there, and different companies and product lines occasionally occupy them, stuff like that. But basically, there are two main campuses that I'm aware of. Maybe there is more, but I think it's only two. Mr. Practical Rifleman. I shot a PRS match in 2014 that had a 1 MOA target at 100 yards. Standing sling only for support. I got the first round hit in it and won the stage. Only stage win I ever got at a major match. Okay, 1 MOA target at 100 yards. Standing is hard. Sling or no sling, it's just hard. Yeah. The close range targets that I saw people miss at this competition were much bigger than that. But again, because of the time pressure, I think they just rushed. They were a little bit too overconfident and missed an easy point, right? So 1 MOA standing at 100 yards, there's nothing easy about that. Mr. Chen. Howdy, I'm late to the party. Does the Swamp Fox new Fiber 124 has the biggest FOV at 25 degrees now among all the LPVOs? A little bit of an unrelated question. No, Sol Callis has these new scopes with huge objectives, eyepieces. One of them is the K18-2, a 1:8 low power variable, and I think it has an apparent field of view of right around 30 degrees. It has about 150 foot field of view on 1 power, something like that. Outside of that Colossus, is there any low power variable with wider field of view than that new Swamp Fox? I don't think so. With larger apparent field of view, but they are not. They don't go to 1 power. Give me 1 sec. Sorry about that. So apparently all those loud noises outside, there's a block party to commemorate 4th of July that was I thought was happening tomorrow because my wife told me it was tomorrow, but it's actually happening right now. Hold on. Give me 1 sec. My wife has an amazing ability to confuse dates. It's a gift. How loudly can you hear all the fireworks outside the window? If it's very loud, I can close the window. I keep it slightly open because it's hot here, so tell me if the sound is distracting. But where was I? Oh yeah, so apparent field of view question from Link. I can't think of any other LPVOs offhand that are wider. It doesn't mean that there aren't any. There might be some I haven't seen. So a very common field of view, wide field of view for low power variable, for better Japanese ones, etc., is about 120 to 125 foot and at 1 power. And the Swamp Fox has 134 feet. It doesn't sound like a big difference, but actually an appreciable difference. So, Mr. Bucket, I'm in North Texas. I may need to drive for a while, but there should be some areas within 5 hours which are suitable for the long range fun. Probably. So I can ask around. My office is in Dallas, so I'm in Dallas area quite a lot. I'm not aware of any competitions like that around there, but there's definitely space. The competition in New Mexico that I'm thinking of is probably about 7 hours from Dallas. So if you're near Dallas, I mean, it's more than 5 hour drive, but it's not that too far out. Okay. Rifleman fireworks, not a problem. Thank you, sir. Mr. Sig, hi, a little off topic, but have you looked at Sig Tango MSR 1 to 6 to 8 to 10 by 26, 34 millimeter FFP in 1 to 10? Heard they have a tight eye box. Are they worth considering for a cheap LPVO? Have I seen them? Yes. Have I done a thorough test? No. The second focal plane, 1 to 10, is it 26? I thought it was a 28. I could be wrong. Was decent. But I'm just not real big on second focal plane 1 to 10s. So look, the way, when I just started doing this 20 some years ago, I could actually look at almost everything on the market and be able to provide a nearly complete coverage. The market has gotten a lot bigger, and I have not, and the day hasn't got any longer, I have not gotten any more free time to do this. So what I do now is that I go to SHOT Show, occasionally I go to different events, I go and take a look, try to take my hands, to get my hands on as many different optics as possible for a brief look. And then I decide if this is something I want to spend time on for a full review, because my standards on what it takes to do a full review have not changed. If I issue a full review on a scope, I have spent a shit ton of time on it. I basically absolutely refuse to lower my standards. For example, I just wrote a little article on that Swamp Fox Tomahawk 2 1 to 4. And, it's not very long. Just to give you an idea, the amount of time I spent with that scope would make most of the YouTubers pale and have a heart attack. Because most of these guys just glance at something and then put a bunch of affiliate links. And I spend a lot of time with these. With SIG low power variables, I've looked at them, I've glanced at them. They looked okay, but there was nothing there that would make me go, oh, I should go review this thing. I've reviewed several SIG scopes in the past, a little while back, that were interesting to me for one reason or another. And I've spent a lot of time with a Tango 6T 1 to 6 by 24 low power variable, and I like that scope quite a lot. It's a nice scope. But with the Tango MSR line, there's nothing about it that tells me I should spend time on it. There are too many similar options out there. And to be clear, when it comes to budget low power variables, the more I look at this, the more I become set in what I think is the winning formula happens to be for a budget low power variable. And that is a second focal plane design, 1 to 4, 1 to 6, with a nice wide field of view and a simple reticle with fiber optic illumination, so you get a bright dot and 1 power. That's primary arms, SLX, 1 to 6 by 24. That is the newly released Swamp Fox Tomahawk 2. They have a 1 to 4 and a 1 to 6, and I chose to look at the 1 to 6 because it has a wider field of view on the same magnification. There are probably others coming because now the Chinese OEMs figured out how to do fiber optic illumination. I've looked at quite a few decent low power variables that didn't have illumination that bright. Filipino scopes like Burris RT6, which I liked, and Delta Hornet 1 to 6, which is very similar to the Burris, which I also liked. But unless the country of manufacture gives you problems, for the same $300-400, if I had to choose, I would go the one that gives me a bright fiber dot, because I think that low power variable scopes have to work really, really well on 1x. And to work well on 1x, you need something that makes the reticle nice and easy to see on 1x, and that fiber illuminated dot seems to be the most cost-efficient way to get there. I hope this whole long stream of consciousness made some sort of sense. If not, please ask another question, I'll do my best to approach it from a different side. Okay. So link, I like DLO's recommendation that PRS match should make people shoot offhand on sub stages. I don't know if PRS match necessarily needs to. This is not a PRS match. This is set up by a different team. It's not PRS. It's not NRL. This is a competition set up by Competition Dynamics. PRS is great for what it is. With NRL, I really like NRL Hunter. We changed the rules a little bit to accommodate recoil and make it a little more similar to hunting. And this competition dynamics stuff is like adds some other additional elements to it. I think there is space in this whole competitive marketplace for different flavors. Yeah. For the things that I consider important about shooting, doing something unsupported, in my opinion, should be a requirement. And I know a ton of people who absolutely disagree with me. They are more on the PRS side of things, just really, truly amazing long-range shots. Some of my really close friends are. And they, what they enjoy is a heavy rifle and a guy on his belly looking out and really, really understanding wind and shooting something very small, very far away. They're amazing at what they do. And it's remarkable that they can pull it off. But I think it's a little bit different in terms of its focus than this competition dynamics course. And I like the competition. For me personally, I like the competition dynamics approach to it more. Okay. Mr. Sig, thank you. I live in Norway and not seen swamp box and primary arms for sale there. Okay. But SIG and Vortex are available, so I was curious about the SIG. So with Vortex, their PST Gen 2 126x24 has a fiber optic dot, but it's probably more expensive there in Europe. I'm not sure. So European prices are different. I think Vortex and Leupold are quite a bit more expensive in Europe than they are here. It's probably the same with SIG, but I really don't know for sure. So I wish I could be more helpful, but I just have not spent enough time with those scopes to have an opinion. All right, I think I got through all the questions for now. I'll drink a little bit more water and tell you a bit about the different optics I had a chance to see during the competition, and we'll go from there. Lately, I had quite a few different comments on YouTube with people complaining that I speak softly and they can't figure out what I'm saying. So if I start mumbling, please stop me. I don't take it personally. When I find the topic of the conversation interesting, my brain runs faster than I can talk. And I have a suspicion that my diction goes to shit, for which I do apologize. Please, if you can't understand what I'm saying, please stop me. Or just ask me to explain something in more detail or more clearly. I'll be happy to. All right, so different Burris Steiner products that I had a chance to see while I was there. I've already mentioned the binoculars, so let's talk about the binoculars a little bit. One was the Burris Signature LRF 10x42. Looks like a Chinese OEM, the laser range finding binocular. Same OEM that I've seen in a few other places. It's the same OEM as a Delta Titanium 9x45, as Meopta Optica LR, and Leupold BX4 range. And out of all of those, Burris seems to be the least expensive. It's supposed to be MAP at 900-ish, but I keep on seeing it on Optics Planet for about 820, something like that. I have a post on my website, darklordofoptics.com, about 4th of July deals. So there are some links there if you don't want to look. I really liked it. For 820 bucks, it's probably the best LRF binocular that I've seen. Now, it doesn't have ballistics integrated, right? So it's a simpler product, but it's quite nice optically. And the LRF on this works on deer to maybe 1,000-ish, 1,200. I did not have any problems ranging any of the plates at this competition. And then I would ask the range officers how far those plates are, and I was able to range them correctly. It gives you linear distance and the angle, so you can get the distance and the equivalent horizontal, which is the bulk of what I care about in most cases. I liked it. It's an easy recommendation. I spent a good amount of time with it. Dropped it a few times. We got rained on. I didn't care about water. When the first day when we just got there, everything, some serious rain started. So we all huddled up under cover. So I had these 3 binoculars. I just put them out in the water and soaked them. I don't think Burris guys enjoyed my prompt waterproofness test, but all 3 binoculars were just fine. Then there was a Burris Signature HD 10x42, just a regular binocular. Don't know if it's the same OEM or not. I probably not. It looked like maybe like a Kamakura China product. I could be wrong. Really nice optically. So for $500 or $550, whatever it costs, wonderful. Now, I don't like the 10x42 configuration too much. I prefer slightly larger exit pupil, but that's the most popular configuration sales-wise, I think. So if you're in the market for 10x32 binocular, in terms of what you get for the money, that little Burris was excellent. Really well controlled chromatic aberration, field of view, decent, not amazing, but not bad at all. I didn't feel in any way restricted by it. Good focus, so I didn't see much hysteresis. And since I've spent a lot of time with these, one of the kind of less obvious but more important parts of using a binocular is that how quickly do you accumulate eye fatigue. And I spent a lot of time with these, and they were easy to use. I didn't walk off with a violent headache, anything like that. So they were good. Jesus, how are they exploding out there? Okay, and the last binocular I saw was a Burris Signature HD 12x50. It was not bad, but the field of view felt a little bit more restrictive. Again, $550, $600, something like that. It's not bad. Again, hand holding at 12 is a little bit harder, so I try to lean on stuff and have some sort of support. It's a perfectly respectable binocular, but against the field, I think it's weaker than the 10x42s. In a similar price range, you can get Athlon has a new Midas 12x50 with a reticle. I think it's a little better optical. I have it not in my studio. I have it elsewhere. I spent quite a lot of time with it. I think it's a little bit better optically, and it has a reticle. And the reticle is kind of an interesting thing, right? So if I were to try to pick a perfect binocular for this, I'd want something with a laser rangefinder and a reticle, right? So you need and there's not a lot of options right now. It's just the new Victronics that's just now coming out that I haven't yet tested. But when you are looking with binoculars, you need the LRF to figure out, how far the target is, right? You need good optics to be able to see the bloody plates because they're really not easy to see. And then when your teammate is shooting, you want to be able to evaluate the miss. And when you find those targets, it's actually very useful to be able to quickly measure how big the plates are in milliradian without you have to think what is 12 inches at 476 yards, right? If you have a ruler in a binocular, if you have a reticle, you just look at it, okay, it's 1 milliradian wide, 2 milliradian tall. That's what I have to work with, right? So if you aim center plate and your partner tells you missed by 0.7 of a milliradian, you know that you move to the edge of the plate, you'll be on, right? Or by how far I need to move. But and having the reticle and the binocular delineated in the same units as the reticle and the rifle scope would be very, very helpful. One of the things I saw that was very interesting was Interesting question. So I'll address that in a sec. Let me finish the binocular story. Mr. Conbucket has again an interesting question. Those Texans. Where was I? If money is no object, right, and I were trying to set this up, I would have a binocular with a setup with a ballistic calculator that has the ballistic profile of your shooting partner loaded in it. So one of the things I saw that I think was wasting time. So the rifle guy would get on a gun. He would choose a target to engage. His teammate with the binoculars looking at that target, ranging the distance, and tells him, okay, this thing is at 460 yards. And then the guy with a rifle scope pulls up his lookup table taped to his arm. A few people even lost them along the way. Taped to his arm and starts figuring out what his hold is for that 460 yards, something like that. What I saw very little of is communicating in milliradian. And if you really want to be efficient, the guy on the scope needs to be looking just through the scope. And the guy spotting needs to be able to feed him the information in milliradian or MOA, whatever you choose to shoot with, so that he can just figure out what to hold. If you do not have that ability, the easiest, okay, if I were doing this, I would have something with a ballistic calculator, so that we can talk in angular units, not in distances. The way to work around this is to use something like the Burris Eliminator 6 rifle scope. I don't think I saw anybody using them. They're just now beginning to trickle out. I plan to do a full test on it, but when I did some shooting at the competition, and after the competitors were done, I got a chance to go around and shoot at some plates. Burris guys had a few rifles, a couple of company guns, a couple of personal guns, and one of them had the Eliminator 6 on it, and I did some shooting with it. It was able to measure all those plates without any issues. It gave me the corrections. It gives me the hold accurately. It told me how to interpret the reticle for wind accurately. On 12 power, it is accurate in milliradians. So the reticle, it's a tree reticle with dots, and at 12 and 12 power, it's accurate in milliradians, which was useful. If you use that, then it doesn't matter what your shooting partner feeds you, because there's a built-in laser rangefinder. As long as you're looking at the same plate, you're fine. And optically, the Eliminator 6 was quite good. I think if you're familiar with the Burris product lines, I think it was better than XTR2, maybe not quite as good as XTR3, but it was competent. On higher magnifications, optical quality was good. Depth of field got a little narrow, but that side focus, that was not much of an issue. Shooting in the middle of the day, the way I shoot, I'm so used to front focal plane scopes. I don't think what magnification I'm on. I just set up to something that's comfortable for me, and I kept on shooting plates at the 400-ish yard range, and then I got up, I look at the scope. I had it sitting. I ended up dialing it down to 7 power because I like the wide field of view, and image quality was plenty for me to be shooting these plates at 400 some yards. I remember with previous generations of Burris's Eliminator, I kept on trying to bump up magnification because I just couldn't quite see well enough, right? With Eliminator 6, the image quality did not hold me back in the slightest. Now, I did not try to shoot with it early in the morning when the shadows were really messing with everyone, because that's when the competitors were shooting, and I didn't want to get in the middle of that. So I only shot a little bit later in the day, late morning, and then late afternoon, when all the different all the teams were done. But if you do not have a binocular with a ballistic solution, then try to have one in a scope. And the Eliminator 6 would do very well there. There are a couple other scopes there, with built-in LRFs out there. They're very expensive, though. I would probably try Eliminator 6, and honestly, I might, depending on how we do this. It's one of the possibilities. For the carbon shooter, it might actually work very well. Maybe for the bolt gun as well. Okay, a couple of questions here, Mr. Cunt Bucket. Is there a specific reason monoculars don't seem to be that popular? I like the idea of a 7 or 10x monocular, especially with a simple reticle. They're a pain in the ass to find, though. There has not been a ton of demand. I like them, but they work best for... You guys hear the fireworks, right? What the hell? I'm trying to burn down my house. Was it monoculars? Yeah. There's not been a ton of demand, and they are at their best when you need to take a quick look. For any sort of a prolonged observation, using 2 eyes is significantly better, introduces less fatigue. That's why you don't want to be spending a huge amount of time on a spotter. You don't want to be spending hours at a time looking through a rifle scope. Once your eyes are shut, they're shut. I mean, you get tired, and your visual acuity really goes down. I saw quite a few people there who had their regular binoculars, then without a laser rangefinder, take a monocular LRF and then range with that. So that works. It's just an extra step, extra piece of equipment to carry. But that would work just fine. Mr. The X, yes, the spotter should be giving the shooter the firing solution. Ideally, yes. But now that I think about it, I don't know, are all of these guys used to shooting with each other? Some of them just meet, agree to shoot together remotely, meet at the tournament. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to figure that out. Some teams I saw had fairly unequal skills, so the guy behind the rifle seemed like a stronger shooter than the carbine guy. So I don't know how well it would work if the weaker shooter is giving directions to the stronger shooter. It should be fine, but personalities are interesting that way. So I don't know, but for a competition like this, where there is emphasis on precision, accuracy, and speed, there is a very strong advantage in not looking away from your scope, right? So Burris Eliminator 6 would work well if you want to talk in distance. Something like if you want to talk in distance, for example, so there's a way to work around that. If you don't have a binocular with a ballistic solution, you can use a there's a mosquito flying around pissing me off. Sorry, I'm gonna get this fucker eventually. Burris Versatility PH has a ballistic solution in it, and you can express it, I think, in yards, right? So in that case, the guy with a simple laser range finding binoculars, ranges the target, goes okay, you're at 560 yards, and then you can keep looking through the scope and you dial the turret, and then the heads-up display you can dial to 560 yards. There you go. So you can communicate with distance, but if you communicate with distance, it's better than if your scope can talk in distance rather than angular units. Just depends on what you have. So the Revit PMR, I'm waiting for the 2nd-gen Revit to show up here. It should be some point in the not too distant future. Hopefully, that would actually be a very interesting scope to take to this competition for the same reasons, because I never have to look away from it. And whenever you have time pressure, being able to set up behind the scope and not look away has got to be an advantage. Mr. Dex, if they're firing as teams, it usually means the better shooter is the spotter. Well, here's the thing, right? So first, invariably, was the carbine guys shooting, the rifle guys spotting, right? once the carbine guy is done, then the rifle guy is shooting and the carbine guy is spotting. So you have to trade roles. In a traditional sniper team, yes, you're right. So the more experienced guy would be the guy calling the shots, and the less experienced guy is just pulling the trigger. But here you have to go, you have to switch and go back and forth. So you have to find a way of consistent communication in both directions with both shooters. So let's see. Where was it? Is there anything else I wanted to say about scopes? Yes. So I spent some time with some more time with XTR Pro, but I have an XTR Pro here. I know I like that scope. It's a nice design. So there was nothing new there. It's very good scope for competition like this. On a little bit too much magnification. A little bit too much magnification with the XTR Pro for unsupported shooting, but you can take it down to 5.5. The reticle gets thin, but the way Burris did illumination really helps. And I tried it, and it didn't give me too much trouble. I now have seen several samples of the XTR Pro in addition to the one I have here, and I like that scope quite a lot for the money. It would be difficult to do better. I know there have been a few where the turrets were inconsistent, but Burris seems to be taking care of it. And the way I saw them treating it in manufacturing and in QC, I think you'll see them come out from the factory nice and consistent. What else did I shoot with? So Steiner T6XI 3-18x56 was on an AR that Sky had there. She liked that scope a good bit. SCR 2mm reticle. I have that reticle next to R3, so I'm comfortable with the reticle. I did some shooting with it. Nice scope, but the way it works out. So now I've had the chance to spend a reasonable amount of time with the different Steiner T6XI designs, and the overall performance is quite consistent. But the reason to get the 3-18x56 is if you are going to be doing a lot of things in low light, where that large objective gives you an advantage. If this is not a dedicated low light rifle, I would probably lean toward a 2.5 to 15x50. Somehow, with that scope, the performance is more consistent across the magnification range. And if you, the scope's a little shorter, which is nice. And if you happen to do anything with a clip-on of any sort, then 2.5 power on the low end is a lot better than 3. For clip-ons, it matters. With the 3-18 on high magnification, it capped its performance very nicely out to about 15 or so. And between the 15 and 18, there was a little bit of a drop-off in image quality. Now, it's not a big drop-off. I've seen scopes where you get past certain magnification and it just goes to shit. None of that. But there was a slight drop-off. I didn't see a lot more at 18 than I saw at 15. And in 15, it was very good, but not better than a 2.5 to 15, at least based on my recollection. Right. So again, if you in low light, there's no replacement for cubic inches, and the rifle scope equivalent of cubic inches is magnification, is objective diameter. Excuse me. Right. But unless you need the largest possible objective for low light use, in some ways, a 2.5 to 15 is a more compelling scope. The problem with the 2.5 to 15 is that it has the SCR reticle. I don't think it has a SCR 2mm, which is a 3 reticle. So if you need a 3 reticle, then 3-18 is a better bet. If you don't, if you can live without the 3, 2.5 to 15, I think on overall is a more balanced version of a T6 XI. Okay. Mr. The X, I like that concept. As you have stated, communication is key. Yes, communication is key. And another thing to think through very carefully is support equipment. you have to be competent shooting off of the tripod. Tripod is your best friend. Stages where it is allowed. You're kind of on a rough terrain. If you can go prone, go prone. You should have a bipod in your gun. Often enough, you can't go prone, so you have to shoot off the tripod. Some stages had to shoot standing. There were quite a few that you could shoot sitting. And one thing I found very interesting is that a lot of people would get kneeling with the rifle and behind the rifle with the rifle on a tripod. I found that a little bit odd because for me, kneeling or shooting off the tripod is less stable than sitting on my ass and shooting off the tripod. There, I'm actually a lot more stable. I didn't see anyone doing it. I wondered, talked to a couple of people about it. They were also somewhat surprised. Maybe there is something that I don't understand. I need to go do more experimentation. So for me, sitting off of a tripod is very stable. Not quite as stable as prone, but up there. Because that way you can sit down, pull up one knee, get your elbow, go over the knee a little bit, so your elbow is supported, the rifle is supported. It's a nice, stable shooting position. Bipods. Lots of shooting prone off of the bipods, but like I said, there was one stage. Bloody fireworks. There was one stage where you needed to shoot. You could get one knee on the ground. You could shoot with anything that's attached to the rifle. And the people with a triple pull sky bipod, which goes up to about 36 inches, something like that, just had made the easy work of that stage, and everybody else struggled. So, yeah, think through your support equipment. If you need a bipod, you can use prone and you can use kneeling or sitting. I don't think there's a huge number of options. Sky triple pull is one. I think there's a company called Hatch that makes bipods, a little more hunting oriented. That also do the similar triple pull design. I've never used them. I've seen pictures. I have a Gunworks bipod that is a triple pull, but it's a shorter triple pull. I don't think it goes tall enough to use kneeling on one knee. But I'm pulling it up to see what the tallest position is. I have a couple of them, and I have not tried to shoot them with this configuration. Yeah, the tallest it goes is about 19 inches, which is not bad. And for somebody smaller, it might actually be enough. I don't think I can shoot off of one knee with a 19-inch tall bipod. I could, if I could sit on my ass on some rifles, I would probably be able to shoot with a 19-inch tall bipod sitting, depending on if you're shooting up or down also and all that. So, but the point here is that this is, if you haven't seen this Gunworks bipod, I'm going to put it up on the screen for a moment because overall I'm very impressed with it. Where's this thing? Yeah. I've talked about it a little bit in the past, not a ton. That's the bipod I have on the Stack Pursuit rifle I have. There we go. So Gunworks Elevate 2.0, I've got one of these. I really rather like it. Spent a ton of time shooting with it. It is a triple pull, but it's a very compact and lightweight triple pull. I'm going to go do a ton of experimentation with it and decide. It might not quite be tall enough for this competition. If that's the case, I'll have to break down and spend $1,000 on a Sky triple pull, or maybe I'll try that Hatch bipod just to experiment. I think it's a little cheap in the $500-600 range. Still a ton of money for a bipod, but just not that many options. Okay. All right, Mr. Coyle is asking Steiner T6. Yeah, so I just gave the whole speech about the T6. Were you here for that? Or did I misspeak something and call the scope something else? It's a T6XI. Excuse me. Pardon me. All sorts of various allergies. Kyle, Manfrotto makes great tripods with many heads. Manfrotto does most of the. So when my first shooting tripod was a Manfrotto, and it worked nicely, but I think they do better as photo and video tripods. For shooting, the shooting world to a good degree has stabilized on Arca Swiss heads, and Manfrotto has their own thing for the most part. On the high end, people were using Really Right Stuff tripods, and they are very, very nice. I have a ton of different tripods from different companies. I have a large 40 millimeter tripod from Athlon. I have a bunch of tripods from Sunway Photo in terms of bang for the buck. I think several Sunway models would be it. The latest one, so I just got from Sunway Photo a 2-section legs tripod, so it doesn't fold very tight, but with only 2 legs, it's very quick to deploy and set up. That would probably do very well for this competition. It's a 36 millimeter leg. It's very sturdy and not super heavy, so that would do well. Last hunting season, I hunted with a tripod from Spartan Precision. I think it's probably the best hunting tripod I've seen to date. But it's for a competition like this, I might be inclined to go with something a little bit beefier. So Spartan Precision uses this magnetic stem. And what I found is that it's by far the quickest thing for me to deploy. But past 500 yards, I think a larger, beefier tripod does a little bit better for me. Now, Spartan does have larger, beefier ones than what I use. I have the one called, oh, Jesus. All the words. I'm searching for words, need to get more sleep, I think. So I have a ton of mileage with Spartan Precision tripods and like them quite a lot. So I have the Gen 2 Ascent tripod. Once again, as far as hunting goes, I think it's the best I've seen yet. They do have a heavy-duty Hercules. I saw it at SHOT Show. I haven't used it. For this kind of stuff, I might be inclined to stick with a somewhat more conventional tripod with an Arca clamp. And I don't know which one. So there are a couple of Sunway Photo ones that would work, especially that 2-section one. And the most likely contender on balance. So one of the companies I like is Field Optics Research. They do clever things. And they have this type of a tripod called the dome top, where it's kind of like a bolt top inverted. In terms of ease of adjustment, getting in just the right amount of resistance, I think that's the best I've seen yet. They've made a couple of different versions of it. I have a earlier version of it. It's not as smooth as I'd like, but it works. The latest ones I've seen at SHOT were really good, and I'm supposed to get one comparatively soon that I'm very curious about. If it is as good as I think it is, that would probably end up being my choice. It's more money than the Sunway. Not quite as much money as the Really Right Stuff. In a very clever way of controlling the head. Let me see if I can show you the picture so that you understand what I mean. By the way, I have my own discount code with Field Optics Research. Dark20 gets you 20% off. But now it's 4th of July. They have some sort of a code out that's 20% off anyway. There we go. So let me see if I can put this up on the screen. So that's the dome top tripod from Field Optics Research. Okay. So if you look at this thing, there is this cylindrical thing right under the clamp. That's your tensioning. So you just put your hand on that in a fairly normal position and adjust the tension and do small adjustment. It works spectacularly well. So I was quite impressed with once again the very early one I have is I've been using it for a year with good success, but it's not as smooth as the new ones they showed at Chat Show. So I'll issue a full review once I have the new one in my hands. Jesus. Okay. Hey, if you don't want a discount code, you don't have to use it. Like I said, for 4th of July, they have their discount code out that gives you 20% on everything, so you can use that. Kyle, tripod is like a scope of binos. Hard to get just one here. Tell me about it. I don't know how many I have. I can think of 10 or 11 right off the top of my head, but there may be more. I kind of go through them. It's very interesting. I have a lightweight tripod from a Peak Design that I travel with to take pictures and all that. I do a lot of photography. And I have some very heavy-duty ones around that I use for shooting. For example, so here's a Sunway photo with an inverted bulkhead, which I like quite a lot. This is 3650. So the thickest tube section is 36 millimeter, but it's 5 sections. So it packs comparatively small. If I need to travel with a beefy tripod, it's not a bad way to go. But deploying it with all these leg sections takes a while. If I were driving to a competition, I'd probably take something with not as many leg sections because the folded length is not really a problem, right? So if I'm hiking around and I attach it to a pack, if it's this long or this long, I really don't care. So we'll see. Yeah, since Kyle is objecting to my discount codes, I think with Sunway I have a DLO discount code. I think it's DLO. I'll look it up if it doesn't work. That gives you 5% off. So where was I? Yeah, support equipment. For both guns, you should have a bipod attached to it. And if you're using a comparatively lightweight gun, bipod will give you a little bit more weight for stability. If you both guns, you need to have with some sort of an attachment, arc plate probably, to shoot them off of a tripod. You need to experiment with where to best attach the plate. You want it to be as close to the balance point of the rifle as possible. But I've seen a ton of people, especially on some of the guns, that position the plate so close to the magazine well, that depending on how they are set up on a tripod, the tripod legs were interfering with magazine changes. So you really have to test it out, see what works and what doesn't. Having a shooting bag, a lightweight shooting bag, is a benefit. There were a few situations where people had bags and were stressed out due to time pressure and underutilized them. When you have to shoot, there were quite a few situations where they will shoot you off of the tripod. On this tripod, where you put a bag under the arm, do this, and you don't want to, since you're walking around with this thing, right? You don't want to have a million bags, but some sort of a bag that you can put under the arm in a pinch or shoot off of in a pinch. Pop on top of the tripod. If you don't want to have a clamp, you can put a bag on a tripod and shoot off of that. Several people did that with reasonable success. Or there are some situations where If you just sit down on your ass, it's going to be a little bit too low. So you go kneeling. For me, kneeling is a less stable position. So the bag I use is no longer made, and it's maybe not the best bag in the world, but it works well for me. It's a Burris stock made this bag. They called it a Pac-Man bag. It's kind of opens into halves, etc. It's very light, and when it's in a compacted position, I can sit on it, and that gets me just this much higher off the ground than just sitting. So that would be more stable for me than kneeling behind a tripod, right? So all these things you kind of have to pay attention to. Kyle, what kind of chassis and actions were out there? There's a lot out there nowadays. And before that, I didn't object to your discount codes. I thought it was great, especially on a $600 tripod. 20% is no joke. No, 20% is no joke, and these are pretty nice tripods. And again, so with tripods, I'm going to be doing a lot more coverage on that because I think people either don't think about it enough or make it too complicated. But anyhow, on the chassis and actions, honestly, I didn't look at that super carefully. And for a comparatively simple reason. So the market has gotten good. And the many differences between different actions and chassis for this kind of a competition are pretty academic. A secondary reason is that when the people were out there competing, they were busy because there was a lot of time pressure and you have to walk between stages. I really didn't want to distract anyone. So I did not want to get in there and start looking into details into who uses which chassis, who uses which action, and all that. I will say flat out that any modern decent quality action and chassis manufacturer would be just fine for this stage. And the choice between them solidly comes down to how it fits your body, and they all work. Again, so in terms of shooting skill, I'd be in the bottom third in that group. And for me, shooting with the $10,000 chassis gun or $2,000 Tic Tac A1 would make no difference, right? As long as you can get whatever stock you've chosen to fit your body adequately well, you'll be fine, right? So the only chassis gun I have right now is a 22, on which I have a Tikka T1X of all things sitting in a really excellent XR Element 2.0 chassis, and it's excellent. It's spectacular. I like the fact that it has a long monolithic Arca rail, so it's very easy to set this up. On a tripod, it works great, and I shoot well with it. The guns I shoot the most with are probably Q's Fix, which is not a chassis, but looks like a chassis. Yeah, once I got everything adjusted, it fits me fine. Lately, I've been shooting a lot with this Stag Pursuit, which is half chassis kind of thing. It's an interesting gun. I'll do a video on it. And once I got everything adjusted, it actually about the same with it. For people who are better than I am, maybe there is more of a difference for me once you get it adjusted. Trigger makes a difference. I like consistent, certain types of triggers. But beyond that, if I can adjust it reasonably well, it all works. Kyle, there was a DM machine Savage short shank style seems to be popular. Yeah, so Era Solos, that's which is the action that my Stag Pursuit. That's a short shank Savages fit that action. It is an EDM machined action. And another, it's a shouldered barrel. I'm trying to remember. Zermatt. I've seen Zermatt actions around there as well. Zermatt barrels also fit that action. Again, what's a nice way of saying this? Any good quality modern action will work. If I was setting up for that competition, this is not. For starting from scratch and I had limited funds, this is not where I would spend the most money. People spend a ton of time trying to find plates. You absolutely need good optics. People got screwed because they were not experienced with shooting unsupported. You have to practice. Some stages having higher quality, fancier bipods made far more difference than any action in the world. Again, and I can only say that because in the modern marketplace, the competition is so strong that between Zermatt and Fusion and KDEX and gosh, Lord knows what else, it all worked the same. But once again, I could shoot this with a bone stock Tika with a reasonable, the TAC A1, and probably be okay. Next year, I'm very likely to shoot it with a bone stock Stack Pursuit with the air action. Kyle, I live in Washington State and lived in Tacoma, Washington, so I have used Aero Precision. Cool shout out to hometown crowd. Yeah. I mean, Aero went through kind of a little bit of a slump there several years ago, and since then they've just been excellent. I've been very impressed. The AR stuff has gotten real good again, and in that mid-price range, it really performs well. And these new bolt action, first when they first came out, I didn't pay any attention. Like that's great, another action. Like there's a ton of them. My PRS buddy Will, he uses a Curtis action. It's wonderful. I don't know, give him Curtis or Arrow, whatever, and he'll still shoot well. So, Kyle, cheap rifle, expensive optic, nice ammo, right? Not necessarily cheap rifle. Rifle has to be good enough. My point is that nowadays it's not very hard to find a rifle that's good enough, right? So, the Stack Pursuit, I think, is $1,600-$1,700, something like that. So for $1,500 to $2,000, you can comfortably find a rifle that will easily be good enough for this. Unless you have some sort of very strange build. Like I've seen people for whom everything is uncomfortable and they have to go get a custom stock, custom chassis to get it just right for them. I'm not one of them, right? So I do need some adjustment. Just because of how I'm built. Like I'm 6 foot tall, but I'm big and bulky and barrel chested, right? So the way I need some adjustment, but it's within the range of most adjustable stocks. Kyle KDEX, very rare and more known in ELR ammo snipers, as a lot of their models come with a proper clip-on setup, and yeah, Arrow is very underrated. They make great AR parts. They do, and I think they're doing very well now with the bolt action stuff. I'm reasonably well familiar with KDEX. I've talked to them a good bit. I've shot a couple of their rifles here and there. They are very nicely done. But again, this is a competition where the capabilities of the shooter are really stressed. The capabilities of the rifle, not so much, right? So if you have a rifle that can shoot better than 1 minute of angle, you'll find, right? The difference between a 0.7 MOA rifle and 0.2 MOA rifle is going to be academic. But there were guys there once again, like Dorgan and others. He was probably shooting a 1/4 MOA rifle. But in this competition, the quality of his gun was not stressed. The quality of the shooter was. So, link. PRS production division limit is 2.5K. Lots of manufacturers have stock rifles just under that, I think. Yeah, any one of those would be fine. But again, there is no harm. If you can afford or already have one, a more expensive rifle, there's no harm in it. Once again, like my first inclination was to go grab my fix, which as configured is probably $3,500-$4,000 before we get optics, right? Because my fix has a 24-inch approved barrel, a carbon fiber approved barrel. So that makes it about a $3,800 rifle, something like that. And I can pop a tangent theta on it and $1,000 bipod and $1,000 suppressor. Well, suppressor is already on it, right? And before we're done, it's a $10,000 rifle package, right? I don't know if it's necessary, but if I had to choose one part of it on which to spend some serious money, I'd lean toward the optics. The optics, no matter how nice your rifle is, if you can't see the plate, you can't shoot it. So, all right, I hope it all makes sense, guys. I've been kind of talking for a while here. Where are we? Yeah, we're at about a 2-hour mark, so I think my locals stream probably just died. It only allows me for a 2-hour live stream. It's still going on YouTube and Rumble. I'm probably going to start ramping up. If there are any additional questions, I can do a couple more, and then we'll call it a day. Mr. Cuntbucket, speaking of actions, I still have the old Mauser actions and straight pull bolts. I wanted to like the Remington 700. I hated the one I have. What's wrong with me? It seems I only like niche things. Yeah, I'm not a Remington 700 fan. Hate the fucking thing with a passion. If you like nice things and you like a straight pull rifle, a while back I tested the Strasser RS-14. Unfreaking believable gun. That would be actually interesting to shoot it with a Strasser. Really fast straight pull bolt. Beretta has a new bolt gun, I think called BRX, something like that. That's straight pull and available in the United States, and they were very accurate. Could potentially be interesting. But again, so Remington pattern, the ton of these actions that we talk about are Remington pattern actions. And the only thing they share with Remington is that you can use Remington 700 aftermarket components. Beyond that, these are spectacular actions. I only have one Remington gun, an old 870 shotgun. Have never seen anything else made by Remington that I thought was worth buying. So, go figure. Okay. All right, one more question, and then we'll wrap it up for a day. Going once, going twice. I'm going to refill my glass. And if there's anything I missed, please tell me. Perfect. I finished my bottle of Pellegrino. Okay. It looks like we are done. You know, what I want to see, I want to see if locals, I think, until it was limiting. Yeah, so locals already killed the stream at 2 hours. So went slightly over, but still on repos too. What kind of rounds did you see people use? 6.5 creed? Yeah, there was 6.5 creeds. There were a few sixes. I think it was a 243, a 6 creed. Some more exotic sixes. I didn't see anything much bigger than that, but again, I didn't look super carefully. If I was doing this, I'd be inclined to do something like 6.5 PRC. Just because on a bolt gun, on a bolt gun, this every shot matters so much, and it gives you just a little bit more wind forgiveness. And because for this style of a competition, I can have a heavy enough gun to have good recoil control and be able to spot my own shots and make corrections and things like that. With my fix, it's a 308 fix, but it's very light, right? So with a reasonable lightweight scope, it's about 9.5 pounds. And prone from a reasonably good position, I can spot my own hits, but it gets a little bit tough. If I put a bigger scope on it, go up to 10, 11 pounds, I can spot my own hits, but again, you have to, not from all shooting positions, right? Here, sometimes you have to get scratched up in a weird way. But if you are shooting a 14-pound rifle, which is a reasonable weight for an occasional unsupported shot, then 6.5 PRC probably comes into play. But between now and next year, I'm going to do a lot of experimentation with this gun, with very odd shooting positions, and see. 243 has such a fatty little case. Is 6.5 PRC a short action? Yes. 6.5 PRC is a short action, so it's basically 6.5 caliber bullet, and the case is a little bit larger diameter. It shoots long bullets very nicely. And let's see. So I've been with 6.5 PRC for now. I've been shooting primarily Hornady ammo. And interestingly, the Hornady ammo I've been shooting so far has been quite accurate, more so with the ELDM bullet, but I probably need to do some more experimentation with it. So for the match round they have, which is 147 grain ELD match, the velocity out of the test 24-inch barrel is 2910. So mine is a 22-inch barrel, so a little bit slower than that. I chronoed it at about 2870, 2875. But with this bullet weight, I'm at about 250 or so foot per second faster than a 6.5 Creedmoor or thereabouts. So it's a reasonable option. I don't know if I'd necessarily go bigger. Oh, I missed a comment from Mr. Ling. $10,000 fixed versus Mosin. Well, my Mosin is not that cheap either. It's got a Tangent 8 on it. So, but if I really wanted to mess with people, I could go and shoot this competition with the Mosin I have. It's actually accurate enough for it. Maybe that's worth an article all on its own. All right, guys. I think it's time to wrap up. My voice is beginning to go. Thank you, all of you, for sticking with me for this fairly long live stream. Please let me know if there's anything I missed. Put something in the comments. If you are trying to get my attention quickly, your best bet is to go to my local's website. It's darklordofoptics.com. It will take you there. That's where I check things most frequently. I do look at the comments on YouTube and Rumble and other places. But the locals website is where I spend most of my time. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Hopefully, I'll see you next year at the Burris Optics Team Challenge. Have a good night and happy 4th of July.